What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Hoopers Lounge with myself, Max Anderson, and my co host, Alex Perez. Today, we have a very exciting episode for you guys, something totally different that we just thought of last minute. We're going to be doing a top 10 character list, so to speak, if the NBA was a movie. So, Alex and myself both created a top 10 list of characters that we would want to see if the entire NBA history from day one to now was a documentary slash movie. And before we get into that, we're going to go with some NBA news here real quick. So, as a Warriors fan, I was very excited to see Jonathan Kuminga drop 60 points in the Pro-Am game this week. He looks in tip-top shape. He's ready for the season, and it was exciting for a guy who hasn't got a lot of minutes to show what he can in a summer league.
It'd be a lot more impressive if I didn't just see my guy Marshawn Beauchamp drop 83. But yeah, nonetheless, 60 is 60. It's impressive no matter where you score it. In some other NBA news, the Atlanta Hawks reportedly attempted to trade for Raptors forward Pascal Siakam. They offered DeAndre Hunter, AJ Griffin, and multiple draft picks, and the Raptors reportedly rejected it and have upped their price for Siakam.
Yeah, after the Rudy Gobert trade to Minnesota, I feel like the Raptors are using that as a blueprint to get more for Siakam, and why wouldn't they? I feel like Siakam and Gobert are pretty similar caliber players, borderline all-star talent, and after Minnesota gave up everything to get Rudy Gobert, I don't see why the Raptors shouldn't wait for someone to give up everything for Pascal Siakam either.
Yeah, I just don't know if that team that's going to give up everyone's going to come after seeing how miserably Minnesota has failed so far with Rudy. Our last piece of news before we move on, the Sixers have taken James Harden off the trade block, but he is still reportedly not playing. He's not reporting the training camp and has no interest in playing for the team, according to sources.
Yeah, pretty interesting. But this is not a good thing for Philadelphia. It'll be interesting to see who budges first, James Harden or the Sixers. But this is a bad look for Philadelphia, and their title hopes are dwindling the longer this lingers.
This is just going to be a distraction for the team going into the regular season. And with a contending team like Philadelphia, you don't want any off-the-court distraction like that. So, yeah, definitely not a good look for them.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into this top 10 to explain it a little bit more. This is just saying if the NBA was a documentary slash movie, who would be the top 10 most important characters in said documentary or movie. Me and Max are both doing a list today, so it's not just one of us. And all right, got a nice quarter here. Let's look to see who goes first. Heads you, tails me. Dropped it. Heads, you're up first.
Let's go, baby. Okay. So, one thing I want to clarify before I get into my list. This list is not players only. This is coaches, media, etc. Anybody related to the NBA and its history, I chose on my list. So, should I start from 10 or 1? What do you think?
Start from 10. If you have any honorable mentions, list them too.
Okay, I have no honorable mentions. I feel like the back half of my list is more exciting, though. I don't know if they're more important, but they're more interesting names. So, I'm going to start from 1. I don't care. Because
Starting from the most important character
so
for you
in my
history of the
NBA history movie, the most important character would be the GOAT, Michael Jordan. I think his work ethic was insane, and his on-the-court experiences are second to none. He's an incredible athlete, the greatest basketball player of all time, in conversation for the greatest athlete of all time, not just basketball. And he would be one of the main characters in my movie. Number 2 is the second greatest player of all time, LeBron, for similar reasons to Michael Jordan. I chose LeBron for another reason too, is because the movie would document how he went straight out of high school to the NBA, which is an experience that not many players get to have, just skipping college altogether because you're that good. Number 3, I have my favorite player, Steph Curry, who revolutionized the game a decade ago with his miraculous three-point shooting. Number 4, I have Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, mainly for the Mamba mentality. I think everybody uses that now, even though he's passed away. I mean, he's inspired so many kids to play basketball. so many of his coworkers on the Lakers and other teams. So Kobe Bryant's up there. And then number 5, my final player in this movie is Dirk Nowitzki. I have Dirk because, one, I think he's one of the best power forwards of all time, and two, his style of play and him coming over from Europe really changed the game. It allowed big men to be able to shoot the ball more than they had in the past, and people like Luka and Jokic and Giannis, they might not be in the league today if guys like Dirk did not try out the NBA. So I think he paved the way for those stars to follow in his footsteps and find a path to the NBA. So those are my 5 players in the movie. I feel like it's a well-rounded list. Everybody's important to the history of the NBA. Now, the back half of the character list. Less important characters, but I still have them on my list because I think, I wanted to think outside the box. So, number 6, Phil Jackson, who in my opinion is the greatest coach of all time. He's coached many of the Jordan teams in the past. He's revolutionized the triangle offense in New York. And I think Phil Jackson is the greatest coach of all time, if not top 3 of all time. I think he's a spectacular coach. Number 7, I have Steve Kerr. I wanted to add Steve Kerr because I wanted to share his experiences not only as a coach, but as a player playing with Michael Jordan. I feel like that perspective is something that not a lot of coaches can have. Not a lot of coaches in the NBA actually played in the NBA. So adding Steve Kerr would add that extra dynamic to my documentary/movie. Number 8, I have TNT host Ernie Johnson. He has been an integral part of the NBA's history, even though he doesn't necessarily work for the NBA. He works for TNT, their whole contract. He has been an iconic member of the NBA community for, I can't even count how long now. And his presence, I think, was necessary on this list. Number 9, I have Mike Breen. Bang. One of the greatest sports commentators of all time who's called many iconic NBA games in his career. Everybody knows Mike Breen, I feel like, if you watch NBA. And his calls are just iconic, so I had him on the list. And then number 10 was the hardest spot for me to fill because I didn't really know who to go with, but I went with Craig Sager, another rest in peace. He was known for his on-the-court interviews, his spunky ties, his spunky outfits, and his personality definitely was fit for an NBA movie. And I feel like that on-the-court presence as a sideline interviewer was also necessary. So that's my 10 characters, 5 players, 5 non-players, and yeah.
I feel like your players were a bit too modern. Like, you have 3 players that played within the 21st century. You're completely excluding any 60s, 70s, 80s players. So, and that was a huge part of the NBA. That's what really got the NBA growing. If the NBA didn't survive that, we wouldn't have it now. However, I do like your non-NBA players list, especially Mike Breen. If I could add an honorable mention to my list, I would add Mike Breen. That was a great call on your end.
Yeah, wanting to be a sports commentator myself, I had to add him. He's called so many iconic moments, and the bang is, I mean, I feel like everybody adds their own spin on the bang, the dagger, if you will. Every sports commentator does that.
And when you're shooting on the court, you make a 3-point shot on your own. You say bang.
Yeah,
it's culture. He's created a whole catchphrase for hoopers around the world. Yeah, looking back on my list, if I were at another honorable mention, it would be Mike Breen. I also want to be a sports commentator. I understand Mike Breen just makes every game electric that he's in.
Yeah.
Maybe the GOAT commentator. I'm also surprised you said Phil Jackson. You had Phil Jackson as your GOAT coach above Pop.
Yeah, I think, I watched The Last Dance, and that made me learn a lot about Phil Jackson and the person he was, and the coach he was, because obviously I wasn't alive when he was coaching, so... At least the Bulls. I wasn't alive when he was coaching the Bulls, so I didn't get to witness that firsthand. As the last decade, I have seen Popovich, and he's a great coach. Don't get me wrong, great coach. But I would have Phil Jackson over him, I think, because it's hard to coach the egos of Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman, and three-peat twice. That's significantly more difficult, I think, than leading the Spurs to multiple championships. But the Spurs were not an ego-heavy team. They were a pass-first, team-first, win-first team, whereas I feel like the 90s Bulls had a lot more going on off the court than those Spurs teams did.
Mm-hmm. All right, I can agree with you on that one. That's a good take.
All right, so
All right.
now to your list.
Yep. I just want to clear up the air beforehand. This is not our top 10 players of all time ranking or top 10 most influential players of all time. This is like if it was supposed to be a movie, the most important characters in this movie. With that being said, I had all of mine being players except for one coach. Due to the fact that the players make the most money, the fans go to pay to go watch the players. So I feel like they're the most integral part of the history of the NBA. And with that being said, let's get into my honorable mentions. First honorable mention I have on the list is Kevin Durant. One of the best scorers, one of the most talented best scorers of all time, a 7-footer who has a guard skill set. And he was a huge catalyst in the super team era with his notable leap from the Thunder to the Warriors, then forming the super team with the Nets, then destroying that team and going to the Suns. He's arguably the face of the super team era in the NBA. Another honorable mention I have is Tim Duncan. He was arguably the face of the Spurs dynasty, my personal most underrated player of all time. However, I feel like a movie needs, drama. Like you said, the Spurs were a very team-first, egos pushed aside, had no drama off the court, and you could even argue that a lot of the success of Spurs had because of Greg Popovich, who's another one of my all honorable mentions, and my personal best coach of all time. I don't think you can tell the story of the NBA without mentioning Greg Popovich and the Spurs dynasty, because the Spurs dynasty ended a lot of other stories for potential all-time greats. A lot of Celtics going to get more rings because of the Spurs and the Lakers teams. LeBron got cut off a couple rings to the Spurs team. It's played a huge part in the stories of superstars around the NBA. My second to last honorable mention is Shaq, as the most physically dominant player of all time, and he's also a great TV broadcast personality. The only reason I don't have him in the top 10 is I feel like he was overshadowed by Kobe as a Laker, and with Kobe staying with the Lakers his whole career and Shaq playing with multiple other teams, I feel like Kobe has just overshadowed Shaq's story. All right, my last honorable mention is Kevin Garnett. He was the first true star out of high school, powering the ways for players like LeBron, Kobe, T-Mac to jump straight from high school to the league. And something I learned while researching this, his contract is actually the reason behind the 2011 NBA lockout. He was a superstar at this time with the Minnesota Timberwolves, and in 2009, they offered him a contract paying him $26 million a year annually, which doesn't seem like much, but with today's money, today's cap, that is over $100 million annually, which is insane, and obviously the NBA owners didn't like all that, so the lockout happened, and I feel like that's also a key part in telling the history of the NBA, that 2011 lockout. All right. Those are all my honorable mentions. With that being said, let's get into the top 10. At number 10, I have the greatest shooter of all time, Stephen Curry, who completely revolutionized how basketball is played, potentially forever. Players were never taking shots from 30, 35 feet before Curry is, and now we see it multiple times in an NBA game. The three-point line before Curry was more of like a side option, like it was a driving kick. No offense was centered around it. Now you have every offense centered in the league around the three-point shot, and teams are taking 40 to 50 per game, which was unheard of a decade ago. Unheard of. Curry has shaped, and not to mention he's a 2-time MVP, 4-time champion, arguably the best point guard of all time, and definitely shaped how the NBA is played forever. All right, number 9. This player might be low to some people. A lot of people might have him higher. I have Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I feel like he would be higher on my list if LeBron didn't recently overtake a scoring title. But nonetheless, Kareem still has the record for most MVPs in a career with 6. He's won, I think, 6 NBA championships if I remember correctly. And his skyhook is one of the most iconic unguardable shots in the history of basketball. He was a huge member of the Showtime Lakers, one of the most iconic teams in NBA history. And his philanthropy and activism work off the court also made him a huge public figure. So, because of that, I have Kareem at number 9. I just feel like, which again might be low, I just feel like there are 8 players that were more influential in the history of the NBA. At number 8, I have AI, Allen Iverson. He has changed the NBA culture forever. He brought street ball swagger to the NBA, rocking the cornrows, arm sleeves, tats. He brought handles to. He was the first player to actually bring handles to the NBA. We saw crossovers, tweens, hezzies that we've never seen before from a player. And every kid in the early 2000s wanted to be like AI. Everyone had cornrows. Everyone was perfecting the crossover. AI was just one of the most. Even though his success on the court isn't as big as some of the other players, never won a ring, only won MVP one time. The way he shaped the culture on the NBA is something you can't make a movie with the NBA but without mentioning Allen Iverson. All right, brings me to number 7. This is one that, again, I also did some research on. This is a player that is absolutely integral to the story, and not a lot of people will know it. Dr. J, Julius Erving. Julius Erving, first of all, was the player that popularized the slam dunk, that made it like a marketable thing. But the main reason I have Julius Erving on here is that he was the face of the NBA-ABA merger, which may have been the biggest event in NBA history thus far. Without that, the NBA would be nothing like how we see it today. That merger was obviously brought all the best basketball talent into one league, and without that, the NBA and ABA probably would not have survived or be nearly as popular as they are today. And him being the face of that, it's had to be worth mentioning. It's the biggest event in NBA history. Dr. J was also really the first marketable superstar in the NBA. And at a time where in a growing league there was no superstars, that's obviously important. All right, number 6, I have LeBron James. People might say he deserves to be higher, and I could listen to those arguments because LeBron was a 17-year-old kid out of high school who declared for the draft and was immediately deemed the chosen one, the king. Was supposed to be the next GOAT in that phase of the NBA where the NBA was looking for a face of the league after Michael Jordan retired. LeBron was immediately deemed to be that person. For a 17-year-old to have that much pressure and expectations set on him before he even played a minute in the NBA, that's unreal. And not only did he meet every single one of those expectations, he blew them all away. There was a interview that's going around social media where the interviewer asked LeBron if he at 17, what does he think about the fact that if he isn't a unquestionable, undisputed Hall of Famer by the end of his career, he'll be go down as a bust. That is insane for a 17-year-old to handle. And yet he did it all with flying colors. He never got into any off-the-court trouble. He became arguably the greatest player of all time. 4-time MVP, 4-time champ, the new scoring leader in NBA history. He's also been the face of the player empowerment era, giving players more power among their teams, taking the power away from the front office, and another face of the super team era, with his well-documented The Decision, him leaving Cleveland to join the Miami Heat, a huge part of NBA history. And for that, I have LeBron at number 6. Number 5, I have Bill Russell. You can't talk about the history of basketball without mentioning its most winning player of all time. Bill Russell his stats may have not left off the board, but 11-time champion is 11-time champ. He's got a ring for every finger, plus one. It's insane. Russell was one of the best defensive players of all time, and he was really the kryptonite of a player I have higher on this list, who I'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, like I said, his stats may have not jumped off the board, but you can't talk about the NBA without including the most dominant team and most winning player of all time, and that would be Bill Russell. All right. Number 4, I have Kobe Bryant. He arguably might be the most important cultural figure ever in the NBA. His insane work ethic and dedication to the game has inbred a Mamba mentality, and that's a mentality you can not take with you off the basketball court as well in your everyday thing. Everything you do with the highest work ethic, highest intensity, highest dedication, and that's how you succeed. We've never seen a player like Kobe, and I don't know if we ever will again. The stories we've all heard are about his work ethic are absolutely insane. Things I couldn't even imagine doing. He might be the greatest Laker of all time, and as the franchise has storied as the Lakers, that's a huge honor. One of the best scorers of all time. He's a 5-time champ, 1-time MVP, and as one of the most important cultural figures ever, he deserves to be on this list. R.I.P. All right, and number 3, I cheated a little bit. I added 2. I added Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. I feel like I compared those two together because the rivalry they had with the Lakers Celtics, the Showtime era Lakers, and the Larry Bird and Celtics really realistically saved the NBA. The NBA was a dying league before this rivalry. And Magic came in as a rookie and won the championship as a rookie and immediately re-envisioned what the point guard spot could look like. He was the first tall point guard, and one of the best playmakers of all time. He's averaged double-digit assists for most of his career. And that was unheard of from a 6'9" player at the time. Larry Bird, one of the greatest shooters of all time, and the first player to really use the three-point line as a threat. Without that, we wouldn't see players like Ray Allen, Reggie Miller, Steph Curry that we do today. Both of them were also members of the Dream Team, the 1992 Olympic team, which is one of the most iconic teams in basketball history. But just because of all those reasons, I feel like you could tie them together as the number 3 spot. Number 2, I have Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt is just a mythical creature. The numbers he's put up just are, I can't even wrap my head around them because I couldn't imagine a player getting anywhere near them today. Just to go over a couple of them, this is a 7-footer who can run a sub-2 half mile, which is, I used to run cross country and track and field back in high school. A sub-2 half mile is insane from anyone, much less a 7-footer. That is terrifying to imagine. Oh my god. Okay. Yeah, Wilt, 7 foot, sub-2 half mile. He had that famous 100-point game. He had a 55 rebound game, which are both NBA records to this day for most points and rebounds in a game. He had a season where he averaged 50 points a game. He reportedly scored a quintuple double in the NBA Finals game. It's not official, but it would be the only one, and not only just NBA history, but NBA, WNBA, college history. The only 3 other quintuple doubles recorded were all on the high school level. So Wilt doing that in a Finals game is unreal. He was criticized in his career for not sharing the ball enough. So then the next year, he led the league in assists, which, of course, it's Wilt. And he was responsible for a lot of rule changes in the NBA that we see today, such as a goaltending call, widening the paint section of the basketball court, the 5-second back to the basket rule. And he reportedly he was a poor free throw shooter, but he was reportedly able to dunk from the free throw line without a running start. Which, damn, holy shit. So the NBA made it a rule that your feet had to be behind the free throw line when you released the ball because of Wilt. Like, that's absurd. How do you dunk for the free throw line without a running start? That's insane. Wilt is just a mythical creature, and we're not even talking about his body count of 20,000. We don't even, that's another part of his story. But Wilt is just someone that everyone who's watching the history of the NBA needs to see. But at number 1, the same player that you do, the greatest player of all time, Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is, I feel like, a clear-cut number 1. He was the first global superstar of the NBA, the first player to push the NBA into international publicity, and the first player to make basketball truly a popular sport. He's also the most successful basketball player off the court with his Jordan brand. He's become a billionaire. He's become a team owner. We're not even talking about a player on the court, but the fact that he was able to all of that would make him the number 1. But with that being said, he's also arguably the greatest player of all time. I have him as my greatest player of all time. A 6-time NBA champion in his 6 straight seasons for him. The 2 seasons in between, he was retired and playing baseball, and the Bulls didn't win them. 10-time scoring champion. 6-time MVP. Defensive player of the year. You could keep going on and on about the accolades. but the first global superstar to make basketball. He really made basketball as big as it is today, and because of that, I have him as my number one.
I think that is a fantastic list. And like you took Mike Breen from my list, if I were to add one player from your list, I think it would be Wilt. He was in there for the discussion for me. He is, like you said, just a unicorn. He's a dragon. He's a unicorn. He's something that doesn't exist in real life, but yet there he is, right there. Wilt Chamberlain is insane, and he definitely could have made the cut for my list for sure. Yeah, I think that's a great list.
And it was fun to make it. You know, we had to go back. We had to go way back in the NBA archives to make his list. The NBA wouldn't be possible without players like Julius Erving, Wilt, Bill Russell, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. So that's the one thing I feel like was missing from your list: the older players in the older era, where the NBA wasn't as big, but we had players who saved it and made the NBA what it was today.
Yeah, and my list, I feel like I tried to get every aspect of the NBA. So international, current players, coaches, media pieces, people like that. I tried to capture every aspect where you more went player heavy, but I think both lists would make an incredible NBA history documentary, and I would definitely watch either one of them. I think the NBA should seriously consider that.
If any movie directors are interested, hit us up. If any of you are watching, hit us up. Yeah. We'll make the movie.
All right.
With that being said, it's now crunch time, and it's now time for my blind ranking of MCU characters.
I have created a list of 10 MCU characters randomly for Alex to blind rank, and we're going to get started right now if you're ready.
I am ready. Your list was phenomenal on our last episode, so
yeah,
I got a high standard to live up to. Let's see if I can do it.
No pressure. All right. Number 1, Dormammu.
Dormammu. He was only in one movie. You're going to make me rank someone that's only been in one movie so far? Strange defeated Dormammu. Dormammu wasn't even that big of a threat. It was more of his minions that were threatening. I'm going to put him at 9.
9?
I mean, he's really powerful. I just don't think we saw his full extent of his power in the movies. It was only in one of them, and it was more his followers and minions that did the damage rather than him himself. The only thing he did was kill Doctor Strange 100 times and still managed to lose.
Yeah. All right. Number 2, Thor.
Thor, an OG Avengers character, and he's had one of the coolest storylines in the MCU. Thor. I'm gonna put him at 3. I feel like I'm gonna get 2 that are better than Thor.
Wow. Okay, Thor at 3.
I'm lower on Thor than most people are. I have some people that I'd put over Thor that are unpopular, and I'm hoping I get a couple of them in this blind ranking.
All right, number 3, Spider-Man.
So okay, I'm glad I put Thor at 3. But the only question is Spider-Man 1 or 2. That's the question here. Am I going to get someone better than Spider-Man? Nope, we're going to go 1. 1 for Spider-Man.
I think that's a great call. He's my favorite MCU character, I think. Most iconic character.
If Doctor Strange is in this list, I'm going to be kicking myself. He's my unquestioned 1. He's in this list, I'm going to be very upset.
All right, number 4, The Collector.
The Collector.
Okay, he's from Guardians of the Galaxy.
I remember, he's from the Guardians, yeah.
Yeah.
And Thanos worked him. Thanos used the word. That was, okay. 10.
Okay. Good pick.
I couldn't tell you anything else about the guy other than that he was in Guardians.
Okay. All right, number 5, Talos. The Skrull from Captain Marvel. Like the alien-looking dude.
Well, I don't. Again, another guy that was in one movie. I would put Dormammu above him. We're going to put him at 8.
Okay. All right. Number 6, Valkyrie.
Valkyrie. Ooh, Valkyrie is a baddie. Oh, she is so fine. Oh, my God. Okay, anyways, Valkyrie. She was in all the Thor movies, but was never a main character aside from the third one.
Yeah.
I'm going to put her at 6.
6. I feel like that's a good spot for her. Okay. So you have 2, 4, 5, and 7 left. Good luck.
We're gonna have to hope for a lot of. Yeah,
Number
I'm
7,
not feeling confident.
Ant-Man.
Ant-Man. Okay, that's not a bad one. That'll get me back on track. Um, Ant-Man. It feels wrong to put him right behind Thor, but it also feels wrong to put him right above Valkyrie. Like, I definitely can't put him below Valkyrie. I'm gonna put him at 5. I'm gonna put Ant-Man at 5.
Okay. All right. Number 8, Hulk.
Hulk. I'm glad. Okay, I'm taking Thor over Hulk. That's a good one. Hulk's going right in 4. All right, that helped a lot. That was good. That was very good for the list. I just got 2 and 7.
Number 9, Doctor Strange.
Oh, I knew it. Knew it. I knew. Okay, he's going in 2, but
Yeah.
he would be in my number 1 if I didn't put Spider-Man there.
7,
I need to make that clear.
7, you have Star-Lord. So not a bad list.
I'm okay with that. I would say Star-Lord literally through.
Yeah.
Star-Lord's the reason Thanos won in the first place. Fuck
Yep.
you, Star-Lord.
9.
You're below Valkyrie. That's where you belong. I am happy with that list.
I think that list was
it's a phenomenal
solid.
list.
I feel like that list is pretty solid. Not gonna lie.
I'm very happy I put Thor in the 3. I'm very happy I did that. If I put him higher, that would have messed up the rest of my list.
All right, so I'll go over the final results. At 1, he had Spider-Man. Number 2, Doctor Strange. Number 3, Thor. Number 4, Hulk. Number 5, Ant-Man. Number 6, Valkyrie. Number 7, Star-Lord. Number 8, Talos. Number 9, Dormammu. And number 10, The Collector. Very solid list.
I feel like that's a decent list. I feel like that's a really good list.
I think
I'm
my
happy with
list.
that.
I
I'm
think
very
my
happy
list
with
would
that.
win in a 7-game series. That's all I have to say.
I have the fucking Collector on my team. What do you want me to do?
Uh,
What do you want me to do?
I've got Hank Pym.
He has a pin particle.
He does. He's old though. He's like
Damn
70.
Ant-Man is nothing without Hank Pym.
Okay, I had literally. Actually, my list is way better than yours. Actually, yeah,
Yes,
my
it
list.
is.
My list actually absolutely would destroy your
Your
list.
list
Actually.
trumps
My
mine.
list in 5. My list in 5.
Your list sweeps. Except unless Doctor Strange can pull off some miracle with the time stone, your list is going to sweep.
I also had Doctor Strange, so that cancels out.
All right, your list sweeps.
All right, so that is it for this episode of the Hoopers Lounge. Thank you guys for listening. Like, subscribe, follow the socials, all that good stuff, and we'll see you guys on Thursday for the next episode.
Peace.
Peace.